Thank you, everyone, for joining across the entire side agent community. I know a lot of you are super interested in this topic. It's just impacting all of our day-to-day work and our lives. So we're very lucky to have CAR Chief Economist Leslie Appleton-Young. Leslie, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure. I was so happy to be there in December, and I never anticipated being here again under these circumstances, and I'm delighted to do so.
Thank you. We're really looking forward to your insight. It's really going to be so helpful for all of us as we navigate this very difficult and unprecedented time, really. As you mentioned, you were at our forum, our keynote speaker, and fantastic presentation. Everything was rosy back then, and
it was
simpler times. But now, you're in the news, quoted as saying, the housing market condition is expected to deteriorate. Now the impacts are becoming more pronounced. So the number one question for all of us is, what are your predictions as the shelter in place lifts? How much of a price adjustment do you anticipate we might be seeing? It'd be good to get your thoughts on that, the level, like how severe at, the national, state, and even local level, if you can.
Okay, well, here's the thing. It's impossible to give you one number without a whole lot of assumptions about how you get to that number. And one of the things that's so frustrating about what we're going through is the level of uncertainty and the fact that every single day you get a new piece of information. We're going to be okay by April 12th, and now it's going to be into June. So the big question for the housing market is the same question for every other part of the economy. When are we going to get back to an economy where people can meet, where there is a public life, where they can do commerce, where we are not living in fear, with this tremendous uncertainty? I will tell you that going into this, the housing sector was in a very, very strong position. And I talked about it in December. The latest data that we had pre-virus was the February sales data. It was the strongest number that we'd had in 2 years. We were up about 8.5%, 8% year to date. We were up 6% year to year. The median price was up 8.5% on a year over year basis. Inventory was down. Active listings were actually falling as the market picked up. The high end of the market that had lagged a little bit, maybe a year or two earlier, was strong in the fourth quarter, and we came in. So all of that was queued up. And then literally almost overnight, but certainly in a 3-week period, everything changed and things just stopped. Now, I do think we will get moving again, even under the shelter in place, right? Mm-hmm. And we're tracking this on the flash survey that we're doing every weekend in terms of people adapting with virtual tours. CAR came out yesterday with guidelines now that real estate has been categorized as an essential service.
Yeah.
But there are very strict rules about that, including if your local county, for example, is stricter, you need to adhere to what the local says. Mm-hmm. But anyway, we've come out with these rules. I hope you've seen them. Yep. I think they're very helpful in terms of guiding a realtor in terms of how to keep social distance, how to do work remotely, how to do all the things that you need to do. But yeah, the question everybody wants is, how big is the price hit going to be? I think there is going to be a bit of a price hit because the demand side is going to be hobbled a little bit by the shutdown in the economy. And again, it depends on how long is this economy going to be shut down, right?
Right.
I mean, the goal is to kind of keep everybody in place while the impact of the virus, the curve of the virus works its way through the economy. And if the Fed and Washington are right in what they're doing, we're going to be able to just hit the ground running. And I think we can talk some more later about consumer behavior and stuff like that. But I think you are going to see a bit of a pullback in prices, but I don't think it's going to be very big because supply is so constrained, right? Because we still have a very tight supply of housing in California. Everybody knows about our housing shortage. I guess the question is, are we going to see a flood of foreclosures on the market?
Right.
That's what happened last time, right? Is that there were so many foreclosures, they flooded the market, prices dropped 60%. And all of the investors were very happy because they saw what was happening very soon and got into it. So could that happen? I don't think that's going to happen this year. I think when you look at what is happening in Washington, what's very clear is we now know how to fight the last war,
right?
And we're not going to let those things happen again. So I think there will be some softening, but I don't think it will be too much. And I wish I could give you a number, but I just can't right now. We're doing scenario forecasts at CAR, and they're updating it on a weekly basis. That's going on right now. I just checked before this session the NAR website because I think Lawrence was releasing a revised national forecast today, but I don't see it up on the site right now. So I can circle back with everybody on scenarios and prices. But I think there will be an impact, but I don't think it's anything to be it's going to be too much as long as we don't get a foreclosure crisis.
Right. That's good to hear. It sounds like you're saying it's different than last time. We're going to have protections in place from a foreclosure standpoint based on what we've learned before. So what about at a local level? Like, are we going to see variances potentially across California between different metropolitan areas? Is there that kind of level of data available?
Well, for the coronavirus period, no. I mean, this just started, and we've just been tracking this for the last 4 weeks. So we know where the hot spots are, right? And they're for the Bay Area, for example, has a fairly strict shelter in place and so on. But the point is, nothing has really changed in terms of what was in place before this happened, except the economy's just stopped.
Yeah.
So it's how long will that happen? How long will that be? I will say that the portfolio losses in the market, and again, we've seen, I think, may have seen the bottom and things are coming back up in terms of that. But, people have taken some pretty big portfolio hits. And when you look at the reasons why buyers are backing out of transactions, that tends to be a common mention, as my down payment disappeared. So that could, that you would expect that to have an impact at the upper end of the market where there's a little bit more inventory relative to demand. The low end of the market, obviously, very attractive rates are wonderful for housing, but this is where you have the biggest job losses, right? And the people that are living, paycheck to paycheck. So if you don't have a job, the low rates aren't really going to help you with home ownership.
Right. So speaking of the unemployment rates, they're ticking up, right?
I mean, it's going to be a big number. I guess that's what I want to say. It's going to be a big number. During the Great Depression, the unemployment rate reached 25%. During the financial crisis, it reached 10%. So there is a lot of variation. And again, I'll make the point, I think the point of reference is a natural disaster. It's not a recession like we had, 12 years ago in terms of gauging this. But yeah, I saw the number from the St. Louis Fed. The Goldman Sachs is now saying that we're going to get, and I have it here somewhere, a a huge drop in 34% drop in the GDP in the second quarter, and then a 17 or 19% increase in the third quarter. So we're tracking all of the forecasters in terms of what they're saying for the first, second, third, fourth, and it all depends on how long you think this is going to go on. But there seems to be pretty good agreement that the second quarter is going to be the sharpest decline in GDP,
Right.
probably on record.
So, at first it was kind of the service industries, and now we're starting to see this bubble up with tech jobs and corporate jobs in the metropolitan areas. So how is that going to affect sales volumes in certain regions?
Well, I think all sales volumes have been impacted 100% at this point. I mean, there's some sales still going on, but in our kind of weekly look at the market from the MLS data, it's just been marching down in terms of the closings. And I think it's going to bottom. And then I think as people figure out virtual transactions, I think it'll come back up a little bit. Biggest, the most pain in the market is at the moderate and lower end of the income spectrum. The losses by the tech executives are probably real, but they're not going to, mean, do I buy bread or do I buy milk? You know what I mean? I mean, there's but it certainly will take some steam, some of the headiness out of the housing market. I think this is a real reality check. I mean, this is a watershed moment, and I've been reading a number of the articles that talk about what is society going to look like after we get out of this, and are people going to be more cautious? Are they going to be doing less travel? Are they going to spend less? And on the other hand, are they going to be more attached to having a wonderful house than ever with a yard and space from their neighbors, right? That people are suggesting that we'll see a resurgence of suburban living as people see dangers in being kind of too dense and too close. So I don't have any answers, but I think these are really important questions to kind of be thinking about as you plan to, hit the road running when we get the green light.
That's interesting. So you are seeing a potential trend towards kind of a suburban movement as an opportunity.
I think there could be, absolutely. I mean, it's too early to see anything, right? Because I think people are still in shock right now, right? I mean, that March 13th weekend was probably the last normal weekend that people had, because people were still going out and driving and restaurants and going to work. And then that following week, everything, just every day, it was like boom, boom, boom. Yeah. So it's just, unfortunately, it's too soon to tell definitively, but it's not too soon to think creatively about what the world is going to look like after this, because I truly believe we will be changed fundamentally.
Yeah, definitely going virtual, and we're all now used to Zoom. And so how should we be advising our buyers and sellers? I think everyone wants to know your thoughts on, if you were in our shoes, what would you be doing?
I saw that question on my list, and I thought about, oh boy, that's really a tough one. But I think I would be approaching every past client I've ever had in a spirit of service, and see how they're doing and see what's happening with them, and just connecting with everybody. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest challenges in real estate, is staying connected to clients when you're not in a transaction. But what an incredible opportunity to touch someone in a meaningful way with resources, empathy, suggestions, all of those things, and find out, what they're thinking, right?
Yeah.
With people that are in a transaction that want to get out of it, I think you just have to, and I've heard this from many of the agents I'm friends with, it's not fun, but you just have to understand and let it go, because this is a really crazy time. But that's what I would do.
Yeah.
If a client then came to me and said, is this a good time to buy or sell? I mean, the answer is always based on their particular circumstances. And this is one of the reasons why we were active in getting real estate reclassified as an essential business, which when it wasn't, I would say the membership was split 50-50 on whether that was a good thing or not. And when we did, it's just the people that were happy and the people that were upset just switched, right? But what we heard from our members was, I've got this situation with a grandmother and she's going into assisted living and this and this and this she needs to sell or they need to move. There are just, it isn't a discretionary situation. These people are in trouble and they need to transact real estate. So in those situations, I think you just say, then let's do it. Let's move forward.
Yeah, now more than ever, they need us.
The fundamentals are still, we've got low rates. It's just before we could point to a strong economy and a strong portfolio. And now we can point to a formerly strong economy that's now uncertain in terms of how long it's going to be shut down, right? That's the difference. So it's not like any recession we've ever experienced. It's probably more like the 1918 pandemic, but I've struggled to find any scholarly works on the impact that had on the housing market in 1918.
For those that remember the 2006, 2008 crash, is there anything that we can take that we did then and then apply it now?
Well, I think the big thing is to not let people lose their houses, right? And that's, what is happening with the government, right? In terms of individual realtors, I don't know. I don't know the extent to which realtors were giving, good or bad advice at that time. People wanted to buy housing. But I think in terms of the regulatory side, the underwriting has been really good, right? And credit scores are good. And there just doesn't seem to be any of that vacuum that we had last time. So I think we did learn some big lessons, but you've really got to keep people in their houses. You've got to keep them whole. You've got to keep them on the payroll in order to have a quick turnaround when the light turns green again. The governor has given the local localities in California the green light to do a pause on evictions. And some areas have done that, San Francisco, Oakland, Los Angeles, others have not, and anywhere from 3 to 6 months. So obviously if you're a landlord, that's not, good news for your income stream. So, there's going to be winners and losers and losers in this, but I certainly think the government is poised to do everything it possibly can not to have a repeat of 2009 and 2010. I've been watching, again, I think everybody has, the projections of this. And the last one I saw was kind of peaking in mid-April in California and then coming down through May. So that would be, if you started it in mid-March, that would be April, May into June, maybe a 3-month window, something like that. But I just don't know, and I think that's the scary thing is nobody knows. The whole point of shelter in place is to not stress the healthcare system, by keeping people, at home and not infected as long as possible. But it's certainly going to run its course. And again, the housing sector is just part of the economy here. We're not the target, rates aren't being lowered to help housing. It isn't anything like it was in 07 or 08. We're kind of just get the collateral effect of all of these policies, because the whole goal here is to stimulate the economy and keep the credit markets moving.
Got it. So it sounds like you're saying it's different. It's different than 2008. It's different than even 2001. It sounds like, and so about what was it, a couple weeks, almost a month back, the interest rates dropped. I remember my husband and I went in and refied, and everyone rushed in, and then it popped up. Then the Fed came in with quantitative easing, right? So where are we now on that? How do you see that playing
I
out?
think rates are going to come down. I think rates are going to come down. I mean, there was such a huge demand for refis that essentially the lenders just said, we're going to ration this. We are not, even though, the 10-year was, I don't know, 0.32 at its lowest or something, or we'll get to 0.39% at an all-time low as people really rushed into treasuries for safety, right? Because they were concerned about, and still are concerned about the future. But this really didn't have anything to do with the markets. It really just had to do with lenders, not, having to ration and not being staffed up. And maybe there was a little taking advantage of the situation too. I don't know, but I do think over the next couple of weeks, and you've already seen that rates start to come back down,
Right.
down a little bit. And okay, so when you look at the act that was the CARE Act that was signed by maybe we can segue into that. So they're hoping that $500 billion in stimulus will get leveraged, right, and become more like a $4 trillion stimulus, because and the companies that get the money, they're not allowed to buy their stock back and pay dividends, right? They really have to keep employees on the payroll and put it into their running their operations. So we'll see, but that's kind of, and then there were some measures passed even before the Friday bill that provided support for the market. So I think we can be. Again, I don't speak in absolutes at all. I learned a lot in 2008 and 2009, and this experience. Just you think everything is kind of a given, and nothing's a given, right?
Right. Yeah.
But in terms of the government, I think everybody's a Keynesian right now, right? There wasn't any big debate about giving money to people. They're essentially helicoptering money around the country to keep things going. And I think that's the right thing to do, because this is an exogenous event and it will end. A year from now, we'll be at the new normal and look back and go, wow, we went through something really big. But I think that's the situation.
That's cautiously optimistic. It's good to hear. I know Hillary has a ton of questions regarding backouts and delays and things like that, because we've been on her team. She's been tracking a lot of that. So Hillary, I'll let you take that on.
With your guys' latest flash poll, what are you seeing as far as the trends? We're getting about double the calls that we used to on how to advise clients to properly back out of a contract, or alternatively sellers who want to potentially back out, which we all obviously go to legal. But what are you seeing across the state of California as far as other agents are reporting back to you?
Okay, so I just got these results a couple of hours ago. So this was the fourth time we've done this survey. So it was sent out March 27th through the 30th, and we had over 900 responses. So it's a pretty good sample. So here's what they said, and again, this has been a steady pattern of more impact every week. 97% said it's having a negative effect on my business. And 92% talked about sales, 93% talked about longer times on market, and 77% it was their price and supply. So those were the rankings in terms of the biggest hit. 86% said it had negatively impacted private showings, i.e. they were doing fewer showings. 45% said they were doing more virtual tours, and that's one of the positives that's come up every week.
That's great.
68% said they had to cancel an open house. 90% said they had clients holding back from buying. who they had been working with. And then 42% had buyers withdraw an offer. 76% had clients hold back from selling. 43% had a seller take their house off the market. And 29% had a transaction fall out of escrow. So that it's broad brush. I will say that I didn't get them yet for this survey, but we break it out by parts of the state. And the Central Valley and Northern California have been less impacted by the virus than the Los Angeles area and coastal SoCal and the San Francisco Bay Area. That's where you see the greatest impact. And I will send you those. We are not releasing those to the press as in a press release. We're talking about them, but it's just with so little data, you've got to create your own data. And I think it's useful to know what's going on, but it tells a very bleak story right now in terms of what's happening to the transactions and the future transactions right in this time frame.
Are you guys asking or tracking if there's more out-of-state movement yet, or more people moving out of the state to be, closer to family or things like that?
Yeah, well, no. I mean, the data that we, I don't think anybody's traveling now. I kind of feel like it was a little bit like musical chairs, for a couple of weeks where everybody wanted to get back from Europe and get back where they were, where their home base was. And then it was just kind of like a freeze. But no, I don't have any data like that. I mean, we do have data showing, the airline miles have just plummeted in terms of what people are flying. And the migration data that I talked about when I spoke in December, that's an annual from the American Community Survey out of the Census Bureau. So we don't have anything on that yet.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going. I'm curious to see what the trend is going to be when we revisit those numbers in December.
I know, me too. It's absolutely fascinating. So as soon as we get them, I get very excited, and we'll definitely push them out.
Have you had time to look into I don't want to call it a bailout, but the economic relief that could be specific to our agents that would benefit them?
And I want to say, for all of the California agents that are on the call, we have a coronavirus website, a microsite. So if you go to car.org, you can get into it. It's right up there at the top. We have a hotline for relief, but if you want the pandemic unemployment assistance, don't call right now, because all we can tell you is the EDD hasn't released the forms yet. But if you are interested in a small business loan, and there are a variety of different options, there's the Paycheck Protection Program, there are the Economic Injury Disaster Loans, and there's the SBA Express Bridge Loans. So under SBA, there's three categories. We can help you with that and walk you through that. So if you go to car.org, right on the front page now is the announcement of the coronavirus hotline, and you can call in and someone will walk you through. I encourage you to go to the site. It is updated on a daily basis, and it has, like I talked about, the guidelines for being a realtor and operating, given the redefinition as an essential service. If that is something you can do, that you're not in a stricter locality, that's up there. A summary of the whole CARES Act is up there. And one of the things I wanted to do, and I didn't get to, was to talk about the things that are in there for working people. So one is the direct assistance. It's $1,200 per person, $500 per child, and I believe it maxes out at like $99,000, something like that. There's also expanded unemployment insurance, and that's the PUA. PUA is the Pandemic unemployment assistance that will be paid in California through the EDD. The maximum weekly amount is $450, and there is a temporary increase through July 31st of $600. So that, and it pays for up to 4 months, and then through the end of the year, it pays 39 weeks until December 31st, 20 for that first $450. So I think that's the thing that most people are interested in. And as soon as we get those forms from the EDD and they have a process in place, we will help you do that on the hotline and get the forms out to everybody. And then I think you all know that if you have a loan insured by FHA, VA, Department of Agriculture, or if it's a Fannie Freddie loan, that you have 6 months of forbearance, right? You have 180 days of forbearance. So these are some of the things I was talking about in terms of they don't want to repeat what happened to people in '08 and '09. But anyway, the two big things for realtors, I think, are the unemployment insurance and the SBA loans right now.
Are you hearing any noise of not insured by Fannie and Freddie if the other lending institutions are going to go that same route?
You know, we have a list. I was just on our microsite this morning, and we have a list of all of the lenders and what they're willing to do. And I don't know if the list included everybody. It probably didn't, but it was amazing that they all did have something. You can call them, they'll work, and they'll work with you. And that list is on that microsite.
You know, let's go up and lift this conversation a little. And
I would appreciate that, because I got to tell you, December was a lot more fun.
Yeah, it's all right. It'll all come back. We'll have that fun again one day.
Let me just tell you guys, a year from now, we're going to look back on this and go, "Wow, that was really something." And here we are, and people want to move, you know, and they need us. And
yeah, what are the top hot spots or bright spots? You mentioned suburban. What are other areas?
Well, this is kind of a negative and a positive. I think the commercial real estate market is going to have a really tough time, and I think it's the office buildings and it's retail, because people, you know, you have had so many people working from home now, right? And gotten over the Zoom hurdle and working really effectively and productively. I don't think everybody's going to go back to work in the same way, you know, and it may be, well, I worked 5 days a week in my office and now I'm there 2 days a week or whatever. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I know it's going to be different. And I think retail is the same way, right? The malls, look at who's laying off workers is Macy's, who's hiring is Amazon. But I mention this in the good news category because the number one thing that we can do to keep people in California is build housing, provide housing that people can afford. I think these changes in demand between types of property really offer some very creative possibilities in terms of creating more residential housing. I think that could be a bright spot with excess demand meeting the scarce supply on the residential side. I think iBuyers, the iBuyers of Zillow, Open Door, Redfin have, kind of shut down in part because, you can't operate and, all of our offices were shut down, but it's possible that they will have an additional boost from this experience as consumers navigate real estate without, open houses and all the traditional bells and whistles. I mean, I don't know if I believe that. I mean, it was on my list of things to talk about, and I have kind of mixed feelings about that. And it was funny, and you may have all seen it. One of the it may have been on Housing Wire, but a realtor was sending out to all their clients, your iBuyer may have dropped you, but I'm here. I'm not leaving the market, and I'm still going to be engaged. But look, there's always going to be consumers that are comfortable doing business a non-traditional way and a digital way, and I think that is going to change over time, right? As those of us who are not digital natives, exit, and the digital natives take over. So I think it'll be interesting to watch what happens to the iBuyers. In terms of new construction, in California, the problem is not the construction, it's not the developers, it's the inability to build anywhere.
Yeah.
And,
the permits.
We talked about all that, housing affordability and density, and all of those things make it very hard. So the construction industry is hampered in California, kind of independent of the virus or not. It's just very difficult to get housing approved. And, I think there have been some legislative changes that we talked about that are making things better, and the ADUs, that's going to be a plus, but it's just not ever going to be super easy in California. So I don't see that as a bright spot. I see it as keep slogging, don't give up. And eventually we may be able to do it. I think, really the biggest winner in a way is going to be housing, right? Mm-hmm. We are an essential need, food and shelter and air. I mean, we're right up there, like in the top 3. Yeah. And this experience has, you just sense it with people, in terms of their priorities. Like what's important? What's really important is sitting down and making phone calls to the people I love and figuring out how to do a Zoom call for my granddaughter's 2nd birthday this week. I mean, it's really, connecting in a different way and living in your home. Mm-hmm. I don't think I've ever spent this much time in my home, it's great. And I think people will feel a renewed sense of the importance of having a space that works for them.
Yeah.
Right. And
that's
that's
the silver
why,
lining, right? That's the silver lining.
Today there's so many reasons to get in touch with clients and talk to them and learn from them and offer your skills and continue the dialogue when we get to the other side of this and people are feeling a lot more uncertain, a lot more excited about the future. I think today there's still just a tremendous amount of fear, and that's just paralyzing, right, for all of us.
I think that the winners or the agents who are going to take advantage of learning all the new technology with the virtual staging and the virtual tours and all that are going to be the real winners on the end. Those who, and I can speak for a handful at Side, who really learned about short sales and foreclosures and made that a cornerstone of their business, right, really came out of 2008 with the most amazing business. They did more right. business in those years than they did before. So I think that we can, encourage our agents to learn the new technology, embrace it, and then figure out how you can implement it and put it into your client's plan moving forward when the market comes back around.
Hillary, I'm so glad you mentioned that, and I was remiss in not. You are absolutely right. I think it's essential to have the tools and know how to use them and be proficient with them, because it makes all the difference when you're kind of home alone. You know what I mean? You don't have people in the office to kind of help you and support you. And I'm really seeing that at CAR. It's been a interesting experience to see some of the younger staff really step up to this challenge, but bring the tools. And the fact that literally in 3 days, we went from conceptualizing this coronavirus hotline to having it launched and having all of the metrics and all of the dashboards and the phone lines. And they're still tweaking some issues, but it's only people that know how to do that stuff that can can do it, and it's really been they have an advantage in this world because they can create the new structures. And I think realtors need to embrace, regardless of your age, embrace it.
Yeah, it was great to see. You mentioned the flash report, and before I saw there were 75% who said they didn't do virtual tours, right? And then that actually increased. There are a bunch of people who are now starting to do it, right? Many more. I think you said only 45% said they were not. So can you amplify the concept of that, of the virtual transactions, all those aspects?
Yeah, and I want to say that CAR is offering some free classes and has some other resources on all of this. But there is, software out there available that can enable you to do many parts of the transaction virtually, right? The Matterport, the creating, 3D 3D images of, having a video that goes online. I mean, looking under the house with a video. I mean, there's so many things like that you can see. I think the biggest, one of the biggest obstacles right now has been having a digital notary. And that is something we are working on. The Secretary of State in California has opposed it and now is no longer opposing it. Now the issue is going to the county recorders in every county and getting that acceptable for counties. For the state of California, you can accept now a digital notary from another state, but how about in California, and what about the county recorders and doing virtual closings? And I believe that is still on a county by county basis. Some of them are all set to do that. I remember, getting a beautiful letter from the assessor's office in San Francisco, detailing all of the stuff that they were able to do virtually. But there are other counties that aren't nearly ahead. So to a certain extent, the technology is all there. It's just getting the people up to speed. But in addition, for doing a virtual transaction, this digital notary is an issue, and the recording is a bit of an issue. So I will be glad to provide you with the free stuff that we're doing on this, that we're making available to California realtors, if anybody wants to go through a course and kind of see how that transaction works. Obviously, we've got zip form, right? You've got everybody's kind of been using that for a long time, transaction management, so on and so forth. But I think this is just going to take things to the next level, because you're not going to be able to sit next to your client for 2 hours and go through certain things, right? You're going to have to be sharing documents and going back and forth. So
yeah.
It's definitely doable, but there just are a few regulatory hurdles that need to be, like when they demand a wet signature. Well, it's kind of old school, right? So
yeah. Speaking of which, Jennifer Burden has a great question. So her thought is, it might be unrealistic to think that a majority of clients will buy and sell virtually. We'll have to show properties by appointment to approved buyers with agents. Since real estate is now deemed essential service, is there a guideline to show a way to do that safely?
Yes, and that's the guidelines that I was referring to that are posted on our micro site, and I'm happy to email them to you as well. They went out yesterday to all the brokerages. You should have gotten one. All the brokers in the state and all of the associate AEs. In fact, in Solano County, the association executive of the Board of Realtors took it to the city or the county, and they adopted that as their rules and guidelines for how to do it. And it's very, very detailed. It went through our legal department, and they're paid to think of everything. And we chimed in. Then we sent it out to a group of about 20 plus brokers around the state, just a sample to get their input. It is a living document. And again, it does not allow activities that are not permitted, if it's a stricter local guideline. And that's, I think, something we really want to stress. But I'll make sure you get that, and we will, and you can send it out to everybody. But car.org/coronavirus has it, and so many other great materials. And there, I think within a few minutes, there is a couple of new temporary forms that the buyer and seller would sign related to understanding the risks of what they're doing, and they're not sick, and things like that have come out of those guidelines, just to help realtors that are in that situation make sure that everybody has agreed that they understand what the situation is, and accept it, right? So there's not a liability there. So those, before I got on this call, they were just doing the final proof. So that may be up there on our website right now as well.
When we're talking about the forbearance or any kind of mortgage relief, that there may be requirements to that, and it may not apply to everyone at the same level. So make sure that either you or your client speak to their lender directly. We don't want to give false, information. Right. Sorry, that's my lawyer brain.
Yeah,
no, that's fine. That's perfect.
Yeah, there were a lot of questions on that. So, so that's good to have that answered. From an economic standpoint, would you recommend a seller going on the market now during the safer at-home orders, or wait for a normal market to resume?
Me personally, I would wait for a normal market to resume. I would be nervous about having anybody come into my home, and I'm just kind of the extreme end of just feeling that we all just should stay home and do that. But as I said earlier, I think it really depends on your sellers, how you feel about it, right? And how they feel about it. And if they need to transact now, do it. We've set out the guidelines for you to do this safely, right? And it's all, I don't have it in front of me. I'm at home, and I still haven't figured out how to hook my printer up to my Wi-Fi, but it goes through every, pre-marketing, marketing, escrow, closing. So there's sections on all of that with very specific recommendations on how that can be done safely. So, that would be my advice.
Okay, great advice. Here's another question. Relative to supply and demand, are we heading towards a normalized balance or a buyer's marketplace? Obviously, this is, after things are said and done, but
I don't know. I mean, I think we're still in a little more on the seller side, just because we have such limited inventory. If that changes, if for whatever reason this is longer, deeper, and the government isn't able to keep people in their at their homes, it may switch a little bit. I mean, I know the market has changed since 2 or 3 years ago, when it was, funny money and multiple offers and all that, and it changed a year ago or so. And then I will tell you, in the fourth quarter and coming into this year, things got a lot more competitive, right? Mm-hmm. And more active. And how would I describe the market right now? I describe the market right now as stalled, mm-hmm. But the basic underlying forces for that haven't changed. I mean, certainly, I don't know. I mean, if buyers are, I mean, we're tracking, let me see what it said, but we're tracking both buyers and sellers kind of pulling back from the market.
Yeah.
And I think when we first started doing it, it was more on the buy side, because because they were losing income, right? It was, I'm losing my job, or I'm losing this. So this said 76% had clients holding off from selling, 90% had clients holding off from buying. So just looking at that data alone in isolation, a little bit more of a buyer's market, because there's not that many as many buyers out there, right? As there was before.
Right. Okay. There's a question here regarding how difficult it might become to get a loan in the future. But it sounds like from what you said before, because of all of the aid that's coming in, that's not really a concern. You don't see that as a concern.
Well, I'm always concerned about the credit markets because they impact what we do. But I'm looking at the Fed pulling out every possible stop to make and the Treasury taking on all of the possible losses associated with pushing this money out. And I think they're going to be able to do that. Lenders are in the business to make money, and if people want to borrow and the backstop is the government, I think that they will probably want to stay in business. I know there was a rumor going around in the last couple of days about the FHA not insuring any more loans or something like that. So I guess that's one thing I want to say, is to really check all your sources when you get stuff on the internet. There are these headlines about, and I saw it this morning, the Fed sinks the housing market, and it's from an organization called CCN.
Yes.
CNN.
Yep.
And then when you go in and see who they are, it's this cryptocurrency crazy guy in Norway, right?
Yeah.
He wants the housing market to tank. And go to, when you see rumors, check it out on snoops.com. I mean, just, there's so much untruthful information,
fake news
out there. There is so much fake news out there. And even when you trust your source, I mean, a lot of people just don't think twice. It's what was on the internet, it must be true. So
that's
anyway, I see someone's asking me a question about agents leaving the industry, and we have started to do a tentative membership projection for CAR for next year, and I honestly haven't gotten the number approved. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but it was a bit of a decline, and it was a decline this year from the year before. So we're looking at 2018 as the peak this time around, which was around 209,000 California realtors. So, it's really hard with the real estate industry, right? Because the barriers to entry are low. And so one of the reasons we're not ever successful in Sacramento at kind of raising the bar in terms of getting into the industry is that whoever's governor, it doesn't matter what party they're with, they look at our industry as kind of the last place where you can work hard and be successful without having a degree or this or that, So we are the entrepreneurial poster child, which is probably not a bad way to be. But I think this is going to be a big of a hit. We've started to come down already. When you look at the MLS data, literally half of our members haven't had a transaction in a year. And the productivity, like the average productivity per agent, is down around 3.5 transactions a year. And that's looking at everybody. So, I think you have markets where the top 10% agents do 90% of the business. And I think that group is going to be fine, right? Those are the adapters.
Yeah.
But I think this will create a bit of a shakeout among the people that are unproductive and maybe just don't feel it's worth the organized real estate and MLS dues to stay in the game, and the aging of the industry as well, right? You've got a lot of people on the verge of retirement, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. What we're seeing too, that's great advice to our community here, because most of the folks here in the side community have kind of weathered these storms before. And so they're proven, and, it sounds like you're saying it's going to be much the same here. Whereas some of the there's winners and losers, but what we might see is some of those folks who aren't as experienced or having all those transactions are going to start to leave, and then there's the aging that's happening too.
Right.
So,
I think it's the people with the high technology component and the high emotional intelligence component, right?
Mm-hmm.
That are able to connect with people with the tools that make this make things easier.
Yeah. Well, that's a good ending on an uplifting note. Any other questions?
I apologize for not having definitive numbers. This is a moving target every single day. So we do a weekly recap on the microsite every week, and I will make sure you get the materials I said I would. And we're here to help, and we're open to suggestions.
Thank you so much, Leslie. Your insight is incredibly valuable.
I had one final question. How do you see the national recovery compared to California?
Great
Are
question.
we going to be ahead of the national curve, do you think?
I don't know. I'm not comfortable with my knowledge of how this virus works its way through. And I can't stress enough, this all really hinges on how long we're all going to be sheltering in place, right? And that's going to depend on the statistics that we see and the testing that's done and so on.
Great. This information is way more clarity than we have had up till this point. So thank you.
I feel a little bit at a loss, but I'm happy to be part of the dialogue.
We have so many key takeaways from this, Leslie. So we'll be summarizing that and distributing that out to the side community. And thank you, Leslie, and we'll be hearing from you soon.
You're welcome. I'm going to get you those guidelines ASAP.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Leslie, for your time.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.